Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining today's second act webinar, Retiring the Concept of Retirement. My name is Gloria and I serve as Senior Director for Alumni Career Engagement at UCLA Alumni Affairs. The second act offers Bruins in their fifth decade of life and beyond opportunities and resources to engage and learn, optimize health, volunteer, and invest in themselves. We hope you will continue to stay connected with the network and attend future programs. In today's program, UCLA Anderson School of Management career coach David Cooley and our panel will reframe retirement and create a new definition of career success. And I will also share some resources and next steps from your UCLA Alumni Association. I wanted to take this opportunity to thank our Alumni Association sustaining donors. It is with your help that we are able to strengthen the Bruin community with career programs like this. For some general webinar housekeeping, we will have time at the end of our program for Q&A with our speakers, but please use the Q&A function below to submit your questions in real time. We will be utilizing them throughout. We are recording the event and we'll send out we will be recording the event, but we will follow up with how we'll be sending out any recordings in the future. And also we will be sending out links through the chat for you for resources that we mentioned throughout the process, but please use the chat as the primary tool to submit your questions throughout the presentation. And so before we begin our panel, I actually wanted to share some resources from your Alumni Association. I know that for many of us, we're curious, what is available for me? And so what I wanted to start us off is sharing what is available for you, and that will help drive what we're going to be talking about. And so let me share with all of you. So we have so many different resources. There is a whole ecosystem of folks on campus really wanting to serve our alumni of all ages, and especially for those of you in our program today. So one resource that we really wanted to share with you is UCLA One. UCLA One is the exclusive networking platform for Bruins. You can find jobs there, you can post about your businesses and services, and you can also find groups there as well. On UCLA One, you can also search for alumni who are interested in helping you, willing to do informational interviews, mock interviews, and really help critique resumes and provide tangible professional development for you. So definitely take a look at UCLA One, as there is also our second act group on UCLA One to continue the conversation we're having today. Share your story, make a new connection, and really join the conversation in finding events and opportunities for you. Also, one tool that is great is UCLA's LinkedIn page. You can find opportunities from jobs, and also most important is the alumni feature right here in the middle. You can find alumni search by year, industry, roles, and really connect with alumni all across the different across the university and the different schools and communities. It's definitely a great tool to be able to further any of your career development goals that you're hoping to achieve. Also, the UCLA Alumni LinkedIn group is a fantastic tool for you, again, to join the conversations, see what are open roles and opportunities, and also learn from alumni and what they're doing as well. So this is also an exclusive group to just our UCLA alumni, so definitely check this out and sign up and join today. If you're hoping to freshen up your online presence, and this is something you want to do to further your goals, this is something that we have a webinar on November 16th at 1 p.m. You can set aside 1 hour and we will actually help you in real time find ways to improve your LinkedIn and UCLA One profiles. Then I wanted to share our alumni career engagement webpage. This is a fantastic tool for you if you are looking to achieve, whether you want to learn, job search, network, or volunteer your time and expertise. We want to engage you here on this page to be able to help meet some of your needs. And so we actually have pages and resources by career stage. And if you are in that late career stage, we actually have tools and webinars specifically and curated for you. And so definitely check out this page, as it will be a great opportunity and way for you to find tools from the Alumni Association that are available to you. And also we have on-demand content, whether it's looking at past webinars and events that are addressing things about LinkedIn, addressing what it's like to ace your virtual interview, or whether it's about finding an alternative career. We have lots of programs here for you, organized by your need and career stage. And also we have a curated playlist for the seasoned professional. So really looking at ways to help our alumni, especially those in their later career, really find and meet the goals that they want to achieve. And also, if you want to join us, this month is National Career Development Month. On UCLA One, we have challenges to help you again connect with other Bruins, events across the UCLA Alumni Association that are helping you move forward your career, and also active and reflection activities that you can take part in to really hone in your skills and also define your goals that you want to meet in this next phase of life. And so we also will be sharing other resources that we'll talk about. And so we will come back to that. But I do want to start us with some of these resources from your Alumni Association, because now we're going to be going into our panel. So I'm so excited to be able to introduce David Cooley, who is going to be moderating our conversation today. David, and with Terry Kramer, Kelly Guzman, and Andrew Plog. Again, David has been the director of the Alumni Career Services in UCLA Anderson Office of Alumni Relations since 2014, meeting with an average of 500 alumni each year. David provides individual career coaching, group career coaching, webinars to our UCLA Anderson alumni of all experience levels. He has a certification in general management from UCLA Anderson School of Executive Program, and he actually is earning an MS in executive coaching and organizational consulting at NYU right now. And so he will be moderating our panel with our amazing guests today. So remember to use the Q&A function below to add in questions you have for our panel. So I'll turn it over to David.
Great. Thank you, Gloria. Very excited. This is a topic that's near and dear to me, not just because, as you saw in the bio, that I'm 58 years old, decided to go back to graduate school, but this is something that is near and dear to all of us, I think, that are here today. And whether it's the panelists that you're going to hear from and their journey and the pivots they've made and what's excited them about that second act that we talk about. And in some cases, second act doesn't mean the final act. It may be the second of 3 or 4. We're seeing more than ever people that are moving in their careers, not just past their 50s, but into their 60s, 70s, kind of all depends what you want. But today we're going to talk about really what led to the decisions to pivot, to try something new, to leave one industry and to go into another. But the great thing is, I'll speak a little bit from the UCLA Anderson perspective, where I am a career coach for the alumni. So that is just UCLA Anderson specifically, but just you've highlighted so many incredible resources that are out there for UCLA alums that I really hope that those of you that are in attendance or watching this on YouTube or at a later time realize how many things are out there for you to re-engage with the Bruin Network and really stay actively involved, because whether it is new business opportunities, new jobs, new friendships, there's so many things that can be achieved. And if there's one silver lining to COVID, I think it's the fact that we're all used to video conference at this point, whether it's Zoom or Teams or whatever you use, people are used to connecting in a new way. And that's of all ages and generations. So without further ado, much more interesting than me are the panelists that I have here today. And I'd like to start just some brief intros. First of all, from Kelly. Kelly, please tell us a bit about your background and how it led to where you are today at this age and stage.
Great. Hi, everybody. Very glad to be here. My name's Kelly Guzman. I started my career at 21 as a registered nurse. So worked in pediatrics, peds ICU, and ER as a clinical nurse. And I do remember in my very first year of nursing in peds, looking at some of the nurses who had been there for 30 years thinking, I never want to be that person. So it did happen very early for me to think, I don't know if I could physically do this, because nursing is a very demanding career. But it was in the 80s, late 80s. And so I got into management very early. So as the director of emergency department, lots of different departments that they threw at me. And then went to UCLA and was the director over ambulatory and interventional services, which was outpatient services. So that was something different than I had done before. And then we were building 2 new hospitals, the Reagan UCLA Medical Center and then Santa Monica. So I became a project manager, had no clue about anything with construction, always doing projects as a nurse, but that was my introduction to transition and activation. And because of the Northridge earthquake, lots of construction going on in California. So hopped over to the consulting role and realized there weren't a lot of people doing what I was doing. So joined a small boutique firm, and 12 years later left and started Yellow Brick, which is the company that I'm the president of now, and have been doing this for the last almost 5 years.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Kelly. We'll want to hear more about your company and just what you think of second acts and third acts. So Terry Kramer, distinguished professor and leader of the Easton program at UCLA Anderson. Terry, I'd love to have everyone know about your background.
Yeah, absolutely, David, and thank you for having me as well. And so I graduated UCLA with an econ degree, got my MBA from Harvard, couple of years in management consulting, and then began an 18-year career at Vodafone, big wireless operator based in London, and its predecessor company, so AirTouch Communications, Pacific Telesis early on. My family and I moved 8 times in 18 years, and I started out in strategy and M&A, had a series of general management roles, ultimately became the group strategy officer for Vodafone based in London, and the regional president of the Americas, which included our ownership interest in Verizon Wireless. When I finished up there, and that was about 12 years ago, I always thought I was interested really in getting into either public service and or teaching. And that's, in fact, what I ended up doing. So after I finished up at Vodafone, I had the good fortune of serving the Obama administration as a US ambassador negotiating an internet governance treaty that was all about the importance of a free and open internet and multi-stakeholder governance. Thoroughly enjoyed it at the intersection of technology and public policy. And then after that, I began teaching at Anderson. I started out as a faculty advisor. One thing led to another. I now teach full-time. I teach the foundational technology management class. I have a new course on technology and society. I do a global immersion on China about how technology adoption looks different in China. And as you mentioned, faculty director at the Easton Center. So all the curriculum development, conferences, and industry partnerships. So it's been a very fun and engaging second chapter.
Great. Thank you, Terry. And Andrew Plog.
Hello, everyone. Thanks. Happy to be here. My background, I've had a fair number of pivots already in my life. I had a film background in college, and go figure, not doing that. That took me to kind of while I was in grad school, I ended up starting my own business. It wasn't something I'd planned to do, but it really worked out. Something called West Side Rental Connection, real estate rentals. I don't know if anyone's maybe gotten their apartment through there. And that was pretty successful. And I ended up doing that, replicating that model in other cities, going to San Diego, Boston, and then in the South Bay in Manhattan Beach. Did that for a while. And then I got into higher ed technology sales, which was really interesting. I became fascinated with adaptive learning, which is what I was selling. And so I was really kind of passionate about that in the enterprise space. And often I was that salesperson knocking on your door, Terry. If those reps come by, that was me. I used to carry books. Now, that was a long time ago, though. So, and then just at 56 years old, I did start to see the writing on the wall that the higher ed industry was really struggling. I could see that they were losing market share. There seemed to be this race to the bottom with open source textbooks. And I just got this feeling things were really going to change. And so I took a chance at 56 and applied here to Amazon. It was a startup division, and they wouldn't even tell me what the job was during the interview, which already sold me. I was like, okay, I'm in. And I fortunately got hired, and I can say now my manager's, I think, 32. His manager is 32. Most of my team's in their 30s. And so I'm never made to feel like I'm 59 years old. I'm having the most wonderful years of my life, frankly, here. And so what I've learned is you just never know when you might pivot. And I'm so grateful that I did leave higher ed because it was pretty comfortable, but I wasn't challenged. And now being here at Amazon, I'm just having the best years of my life.
All fantastic stories. So I thank you, Andrew. So I'm going to go back to you, Kelly, and to say, what hesitations did you have before making the pivots that you did? Did you have any fear at one point, like, oh, where some of the people here may have these questions. And again, by the way, just a quick note before I go to you, Kelly, please put your questions in the Q&A. We will take time throughout this session and read some of the questions. So just put them there and we'll read them. So Kelly, did you have any resistance or internally to say, maybe it's too late to do this? Maybe
Well, definitely. Yes, absolutely. I think a lot of just time in my life, I worked at UCLA, as I said, and, you know, there's a fabulous retirement pension. And I remember when I was leaving, people were like, you're nuts. Why would you do that? What are you going to do when the construction ends? And there was probably more naysayers for me to just leave nursing, but I felt like I had already spent almost, you know, 16, 17 years doing it, and I could always go back. But I think it was more of just this sense of adventure and, you know, like what could, you know, potentially happen. And then felt like, you know, if I failed, I could always come back and be a nurse because, you know, just there's always a need for a nurse. So that was comforting to me. But I think also just the constant in my life has been being more fearful of staying the same and getting bored. And I get bored very quickly. So this has been the longest I've done anything in my career, because in nursing, I was able to just go from, you know, peds to ER to rehab to SNF to a million different things. And here I'm always challenged with the projects that I do.
I love the line that you said, fearful of staying the same. The complacency that we all get, not even necessarily in our 50s, but even those that I work with in their 40s or 30s. Terry, if I can go back to you briefly, you said you've done a lot of pivots, families moved around a lot. Did you have some of that fear of staying in place, standing still? And
absolutely. And, you know, I thought I made a pivot, obviously, between industry and public service and academia, which to me felt pretty large. And, you know, the biggest worry up front was familiarity breeds contempt. The grass is always greener. You know, you kind of look at this stuff in the abstract and think, oh, it's wonderful. And I was worried it wasn't going to be as good as I thought it was going to be. And then what added insult to injury is I had a lot of colleagues that said either you're too young to make a move, because I made my move at about 52. So, you know, you should be thinking about this stuff in your 70s, not in your 50s. And then you get some business people that say, well, do you know how much they do the opportunity cost argument? Do you know how much more money you could be making doing, you know, what you were doing in industry? And all those things would start to gnaw away at me. But then I realized, you know what, as I went on the exploration, which I think is a huge part of ensuring the move is a successful one, it's just spent time almost like a consultant, finding out what do you do in teaching and what do you do in public service and what does it take to succeed. Once I went through that exploration, I found I got more interested, and the grass did seem pretty green there in terms of the opportunities. And I did feel like I didn't need to worry about the money per se. And it actually made me more and more engaged. And ultimately, I felt like allowed me to be more successful because I came in fully aware, thoughtful about the different context.
that's great. And Andrew, let's talk a little bit about your decision. Not the typical, you said you were interviewed with people half your age, and yet they've accepted you wholeheartedly. I understand that you've actually won some awards, performance awards.
Yeah, I mean, at Amazon here, like I think what Kelly was saying, that complacency you have in higher ed, it's so different over here. It's, you know, in the startup environment, you are challenged. You have to write docs, you have to contribute, and you really get so many opportunities, especially in the startup side here, just to influence and impact the business. And so I've had some good opportunities, you know, for the old guy to come in and really do some things that were really impactful and got some recognition for, which was awesome. You know, so that makes you feel really good. And I will say I came in kind of intimidated by the age a little bit. I think we all have that ageism in the back of our head. So I will tell you a couple things. One is I did shave before my interview because I thought it's a little bit too gray. Maybe I could shave a few years off. So it was in the back of my mind. I will tell you that. And then when I got hired, it kind of, they flipped it in a weird way that was interesting, because there was candidates with MBAs. And when I had to kind of almost apologize, say, you know, I don't have an MBA, they said, well, you know, Plug, we hired you. You're one of the strongest candidates because of your startup experience that you had way back when. And that was really what got me the job. So you never know what it's going to take. So that was highly valued in the end. So I was able to grow my beard back.
Well done. Well done. Can you talk a little bit? I'll stay with you. Then I want to go back to Kelly for a bit. what you did in terms of preparation to make sure that Amazon knew that you were for real. Did you put a lot of work into that process?
I did. I probably put more effort into that loop interview. I heard some horror stories. It's a, excuse me, 6 back-to-back 1-hour interviews. And the interesting thing is that at Amazon, they tell you what they're going to ask you. It's very interesting. They have this thing called the STAR method: situation, task, action, result. Kind of gave me an idea of what they were going to ask, but I just took it like I've never studied anything about. My apartment was just littered with notes all over the wall for about a week, and I just gave it everything I had, just to say, I just didn't want us just wing it, right? I really wanted to give everything I had. And after I was done with those interviews, after 6 hours, I remember my wife called to say, "How do you think it went?" I said, "I don't know what they thought, but they didn't ask me one question I didn't know the answer to." So that felt pretty good.
So that prep made a big difference in it.
It really did.
It made any perception of age probably disappear. And so
Yeah.
I think that's later on, I'll come back to you more about that. Kelly, when starting your firm, just to look at the various stages, you mentioned some resistance. You have the people that said, "What are you doing? Why do this at this age? Take the easy way." What was in the back of your heart and mind when others told you that? Did that make you even more want to start Yellow Brick? Did you feel even motivated by the negativity or the negativity? Maybe
Probably, yeah, definitely both. And I have to say it was interesting because there was more, from some of my very good friends or people who were CEOs or COOs of other companies or hospitals and things like that. I always thought like they were going to be the ones who were there supporting me. And it was like complete strangers who really helped and hired me. And so that was, I think, much more rewarding to be able to go out and, kind of smash it in your face and win. And, I think like Andrew did a ton of like reading and research and studying. And I would say the one book that I wish I would have read earlier was called The Art of the Start by Guy Kawasaki. And, you go to school, you're in grad school and you're like, I need a business plan. I need all this stuff. And it was like, basically he says, no, just go out and get work and then figure it out. So, I'd already been doing it. And the nursing process is assess, plan, implement, evaluate. So I just used that same nursing model and theory of, how to take that nursing process and apply it to everything that I did. So you look at the situation, figure it out, and kind of keep pushing forward. So
that's great. And Terry, love to hear about what it was kind of like when you started at Anderson, kind of the new kid in town. Maybe the family wasn't so crazy about this decision, or maybe they were a little reluctant. What was that? What were those butterflies like in terms of that switch?
Yeah, so being aware that, I was in a very different environment. So this goes back to that kind of message I'd gotten actually back to Vodafone about context matters. I remember moving to the UK, moving to the Netherlands, being in Asia, et cetera. And I remember my boss once said, remember, Terry, context matters, meaning we tend to kind of think, well, this is who I am, and this is my view on the world, and this is what I'm going to go bring into the environment. You have to be a bit careful on that. And so I was very, very cognizant saying I'm in a different environment where success is going to look different. And I need to be good at what I'm doing in that environment, not necessarily what I did in the old environment. So I remember when I was spending time kind of researching, teaching, and I was at Harvard asking some of the professors questions, and they said, remember, Terry, if you come in and do a guest lecture, what typically happens when a practitioner comes in and does a guest lecture is they tell war stories. But remember, telling war stories is not teaching per se. That's guest lecturing. When you teach, you've got to think about those students in front of you. What are the skills you're trying to impart? And how do you extrapolate your experience, which is very idiosyncratic. It's very specific in my case to mobile and 80s and 90s and all that, which it doesn't necessarily apply to them. How do you extrapolate that to create a set of learning? So when I started teaching, I was very much aware of don't fall into that trap of telling war stories and doing the things that I thought were successful at Vodafone. Be thoughtful about how do you really develop the talent of the students in front of you? How do you create learnings that are relevant to the careers they may go into, et cetera? So yes, it definitely did take a while. And, the unique thing a little bit in teaching is when you're in the classroom, there's a little bit of a phenomenon that, the students are like dogs. They can smell fear. So you have to kind of be thoughtful about what you're doing. You've got to be humble, but you've also got to be clear about what you're trying to achieve. Otherwise, the dogs will get, come after you. So you want to balance all that. And that was part of the fun of learning and kind of saying, this is a different set of requirements and I'm going to do this stuff well. And ultimately, I think the humility to know that you're new in it allows you to be better because you're taking in cues better and refining, what you do more.
Definitely. So, of course, our topic today, and we have more than 166 people here from probably different backgrounds. We believe that most of the people are over 50 that are on this call. I'm going to ask you really quickly, one at a time. In the last few years, have you considered retirement? So, Kelly, let's say a couple of years ago, did you consider it at all? And if not, then why not?
No, not really. My mom's 80 or going to be 80 this year. She still works every now and again. So I think I just came from a long line of, my grandma's still alive. So I was like, okay, if for 40 years, I'm not going to do like anything. I've always wanted to be a docent at the opera. So I was like, okay, but I feel like I would take over. So I feel like until I can kind of calm myself, and consulting is perfect because I feel like this is a great transition because I could just do one little project instead of 10 big projects. So
great. Terry, did it occur to you at all?
Zero. It scared me to retire. To me, it was an opportunity, to give back, which I thought was very important. And number two, to keep growing and learning. And by the way, if I were to give you one data point on all this, I just heard Arthur Brooks speak. He's written a lot of books on happiness. And he did a study about where people's happiness is by age. And he asked the audience, where do you think people are most happy? Most people thought, well, in your mid-20s, you get more and more happy as you go through life. It actually was the opposite. Peak happiness was in mid-20s and falls until you get into your early 50s. That's kind of the lowest area of happiness. And then he found that people, it's bifurcated. Either people get more happy after they hit 53 or much less happy. And a lot of the more happy was this ongoing learning, giving back, exploring, et cetera, that's where the correlation was. It was not correlated to what he called bucket list items. Well, I want to go, hike here and go on this trip and buy a third boat or whatever else. It wasn't those things. And so to answer your question, I have found that to be the case and why I've not ever wanted to retire and why I found it to be so satisfying to do what I'm doing now.
That's great. I'm going to build on that with my question for Andrew. Did you consider retirement? And then to follow up with that is, how does it feel to be working with Amazon at this age and stage?
For the first part, I guess I had not considered retirement. It's funny, at each of the pivots I had, like when I was at the real estate, I figured I was going to do that for the rest of my life. And then when I was in higher ed, I got really comfortable and thought, well, this is what I'm going to do until I retire. And now here I am thinking, well, now I got a little smarter. I think, this may not be what I'm going to do, retire. Who knows what's going to happen in 4 or 5 years? So I have this block in my head. I'm just assuming 10 years at least. I've made that commitment. So that's my roadmap to retirement. But I enjoy work. And I think when you enjoy work, there's really the retirement thought just kind of goes to the wayside. And then, I'm thrilled working here at Amazon with this young people. I've never been challenged ever like this. I mean, it's a high bar, it really is. And I've also never been as fulfilled. So I'm really excited. I do have a little bit of a luxury here in that I can still pivot under the umbrella of Amazon. So there's some safety where I could still go to Amazon Web Services or Amazon Prime or Amazon Business. So I could do things still within Amazon and kind of still feel like a different track. But so far, I'm ready to keep working for a long time. Pretty happy.
Great, and I'll say the same here. I think at 58, I feel like I'm just getting going, which is why I decided to go into this program at 58. And what may surprise you is I'm far from the oldest person in this NYU program. One of my classmates is a 70-year-old guy that been a CEO of 2 companies, and he is one of the most active participants in the class. Meanwhile, he's a caretaker for his wife. He's based in Seattle. He is an inspiration to everyone in the entire group. So and it's one of the things that we have found out about Zoom and video conferencing and what it means to higher ed is people that normally maybe over 50 would say, I'm never going to return to the classroom. It'd just be too awkward going in with all those younger folks, I think are now reconsidering some sort of higher ed or some sort of education to staying relevant. And so that's the next question I'm going to ask you about, which is, how do you stay relevant in your industry? How do you stay up to date? Let me go back to you, Kelly, what do you do to make sure that you're as up to date and current as those that are maybe in their 30s or 20s?
Wait, I look at it more for the industry that I'm in. So part of what I do, it's looking at healthcare design and the impact that it has on people. And so I'm currently the president of the Nursing Institute for Healthcare Design. So it is a small kind of but mighty group of kind of like-minded folks. And we are, I wrote 2 books on the subject, and then we're, putting together articles and doing, starting research projects. So I think part of it is just kind of being that trailblazer. And I would always say, like, in grad school, did not enjoy research at all. And, I have a great appreciation for everybody who publishes it, but just to me, it's so tedious. So getting involved here has just, for me, been a challenge, but has really been exciting. So I think just kind of being on that cutting edge of how is the design and all of the experience that we have, how do we apply that to healthcare? Because all of us are going to be, we all need healthcare, and we're consumers of healthcare.
Absolutely. Well, Terry, I've been to many of your incredible webinars through the Easton Center. And so, including the ones that are focused on healthcare delivery, and you've covered a lot of different topics. Are there some things that you've really seen that surprised you in this role, especially about those above 50 staying relevant in a way that you weren't as aware as you are now?
Yeah. So, in this role, being immersed with the amount of change that is occurring. And, if you're in a teaching role, you've got to be thinking about your teaching students that are late 20s to maybe early to mid 30s. So you got to think about, what's going to help them. The rate of change because of technology and products and services, the rate of change in companies, right? New companies that are coming about and companies that are getting disrupted, the rate of change in society itself and the imperatives there. In a teaching environment, you're just flooded with those things, and you've got to kind of make sense out of it. And I've just kind of learned, and it's, partly, my own career, but certainly now being in tech, is really starting with this mindset about, let me first think about how the world is changing first, and then think about how do I need to change. And by the way, and David's probably relevant to your work. I remember, there's a lot of parts we always talk about. What are your core competencies? Companies do that, individuals do that. Well, a certain amount of that is relevant, but if the value on the core competencies are shifting, that society values other things, you better get wise to those things and figure out how you can be agile. And so that's how I try and flood my mind, is to start with what's needed and how do I be relevant to that, as opposed to this is who I am and this is what I'm going to go deliver. And how do you do that? It's reading a lot. It's listening to people and networking all the time. It's testing ideas out. All of that, I find, is what's absolutely key. And if you go on that journey, you will be agile and be effective. But if you just say, I am who I am, and this is my belief about the world and life and all that, it's high risk. That's a more brittle approach to transitions.
Great, thank you. And Andrew, love to hear how you stay up to date and you stay current. And then I'm going to go to a couple of the questions that we have been submitted. Please keep them coming in. We'll answer some of those. But Andrew, how do you stay up to date and current, not just with Amazon, but the industry in general, tech and even freight?
Sure.
You're part of the division.
Yeah, in fact, when I came over here and realized it was Amazon Freight, my first thought was, I know nothing about logistics or freight. And I tell you, very quickly, I had to become pretty much an expert on it. I can't drive a truck, but I understand supply chain a little bit better. What I think where I really feel like I'm making an impact here is because it's a startup, there's a lot of roadblocks. We're trying to externalize the Amazon network, which wasn't built for third-party shippers. And so there's a lot, it's very scrappy. You know, there's a lot of processes that don't work. There's roadblocks and hurdles. And where I think I've made the biggest impact is I'm really all about taking a risk. And like Amazon, like say, we'll take a calculated risk. You have data to back it up. So in many instances, I will make a case basically, say, I'd like to try this. And often, most times it seems to work. And so then people follow through. And I think if I have a brand, it's kind of like I'm on the forefront in the sense of finding new ways to do things and break down those barriers. So that's one way I think I'm keeping really vibrant, at least on this team and with Amazon.
And you think differently. It's my understanding that there's a pricing model named after you. Talk about that.
Yeah, it was interesting. It came from the film student and not the MBAs, but we had early on, we had a pricing model, and Amazon Freight is just, we're so new, we don't have any historical idea what things cost. We couldn't tell you what it cost to drive a truck from A to B because we've never done it before. We were open about it. We just couldn't predict cost. So we had a cost model pricing model that was, I didn't think it was really doing a great job. And so I made this case when I had to do an RFP for the shipper to use historical cost data. So I dug into the data, looked at the actual costs to run this lane, and added some margin to it and made a case to leadership. And I was able to back it up. And so that they let me go with it, and it ended up being really successful because the margins they had with the model were so high, I wouldn't have won any business. So it ended up working really well. And it's kind of a funny joke now. It became called the plug analysis. So my manager said, well, you got to go do the plug analysis. So that still lived on for a little bit. So that was nice.
That's pretty amazing story. And this is something coming from arguably the oldest person in the group.
Yeah.
Not even arguably. Okay, well, great. I love it. So thanks for sharing that. Let me ask you, there's a few questions that have come in here. Bob, as you see, says, Andrew, when you submitted your resume to Amazon, did you remove your graduation date?
I didn't. I left it all there. Yeah, I thought about that. But actually, I'm trying to think. Nope, it was there. It was there. But with shaving my beard, I was thinking of all those things. But when I realized that was the last thing they cared about, so it was really refreshing. And I think what was also nice is when I was in the interview, I started to realize that there was some value to that level of work experience, because some of the team that might have just come out of school, when you had to give to answer those STAR questions, you had to have a real world example. And I had hundreds of them because I'd been working for so long in different places. So I felt like I could never run out of things to talk about. But I did not, but it was, those kind of things were in the back of my mind.
And to Terry's point about the Vodafone days, very interesting, but you probably had to think about which stories are meaningful and relevant to Amazon now in this moment in time. The war stories, as you called it, Terry, right? That you think, okay, these are good, but how do you customize them for that need? And as a career coach that works with a lot of boomers and now Gen X and increasingly millennials that are already feeling a little old for the market. It doesn't take long, right? It's no longer just for boomers. I think it's so important to pull from your rich experience, but focus on the most recent and the most relevant. I call it R&R, not rest and relaxation, but results and relevancy. What results do you have that are relevant to this business model, this company, or in this moment in time? Obviously, with things going on in the economy the way that they are you someone that can generate revenue? How do you do it? Are you great at cost savings? How do you do that? So, Andrew, you spoke to that. Terry, coming back to you briefly, just in terms of what you've seen at Easton in terms of the shift. Do you see an engagement of those over the age of 50 a little bit at the Easton Center? Are they tipping their toe back into Easton in addition to the younger students?
Yes and no, candidly. So it would show up more in our webinars and conferences where we'll have people come back. Candidly, you get some people that, say, hey, listen, I've had a great career. I'm comfortable. I don't buy a lot of the new stuff. And by the way, this happens not just by age. I notice it happens geographically. It happens in certain industries. More traditional industries can look at technology-based businesses and get cynical about it. And then conversely, you get some people that say, I want to learn. I just want to be open and pick up new things. So it's a mixed bag. Where it is not good is when people want to make a move into a new area, yet they're talking the old mindset. They're talking about either a set of products, services, practices, how people, leadership models, how employees want to be dealt with and, all of that. They're talking a model that's old, and they're not indicating a willingness to kind of be flexible and morph within an environment. That's where it's worrisome. So some of the challenges to kind of talk about how things are continuing to evolve, and get people realizing that's a good thing, and that will continue in perpetuity in the world. The millennials are going to have to deal with that at some point in the future as well. That's the nature of the world. So the answer is yes and no. And there's a certain group of people that are willing to get on that journey. And I'm very excited for them.
Well, excited that you've done all the programming that you have. And I know that earlier on, Gloria talked about, Gloria, maybe you could jump on for a second to talk about really how are we keeping Bruins, not Anderson Bruins, but Bruins connected to opportunities. You showed a lot of great platforms. Are some of them more tech focused and helping people deal with maybe a little reluctance to get plugged into the digital universe that we all need to talk about?
Yeah, well, I have a fun fact is that the oldest person on UCLA 1 is 106. And so it's, I just want to put it out there that it really is for all of our alumni. And to be honest, our students are wanting to be mentored and learn from our alumni. And also our alumni want to help each other. So a lot of these things about that our panelists have shared about learning, staying nimble, asking good questions. I think our alumni it's a safe space to do that, right? Because ultimately you just want to learn. And so when it comes to the technology, again, I also understand some people are like, I don't think I need another platform. That's okay. But ultimately, again, these are all tools to help you reach your goals, right? So you can decide how you want to engage, and also how, if you want to, spend some time to also give back and be in a position of sharing not just the war stories that Terry mentioned, but also just some, learned lessons and also things that you want our students and young alumni to really be able to avoid to help them be able to reach their goals faster. Those are also ways that I think with alumni engaging, again, I also know with YouTube is such an amazing tool in many ways. Sometimes there's a lot of other crazy other things, but you can really learn something. If you want to Google how to do something really quickly, you can find so many videos on there. And also with our YouTube, we've curated a playlist based on some of the events that we've had that really address certain things. One of our career coaches really talks about how do you find an alternative career? Because a lot of times life changes, whether it's losing a partner, really losing a job, or really just pivoting in a whole different part of your life. How do you find that next step? And so again, videos like that, again, just to listen and to learn. We want to encourage our alumni just to gather and then make the analysis for yourself. And if that change or pivot is right for you.
And to build on your idea of continuous learning, what I'm hearing from all the panelists is you've stayed engaged in your industry. You're not tech resistant. Maybe you put your toe in, and there's some people that are probably on this webinar that said, well, I'm not a techie. I think we can all argue that pretty much every business is a tech business at this point, or very close to it, including entertainment. Terry, you mentioned people talking about old business models, and some of the people sometimes that I've seen at Anderson, they have a great background, but they said, yeah, but you don't understand. I was top of my industry with DVD marketing. And you think, okay, so let's work with that. Let's talk about how it ties to streaming. How have you adapted to new business models? And if you haven't, then how can you learn? And so Gloria, you talked about not just UCLA, but LinkedIn. LinkedIn, let's touch on it briefly. You've got a great workshop coming in. I think you said on the 16th. I think it's so important because a lot of people look at LinkedIn and they say, I'm not looking for a job, so I'm not going to look at LinkedIn, but they haven't looked at LinkedIn in a while to know how much learning is there under LinkedIn Learning.
That's right.
Those at LinkedIn have invested. They acquired lynda.com, I think about 7 years ago, Terry, is that right?
Yep.
Before they themselves were acquired by Microsoft for $26 billion.
Yep.
And you think, what does that mean? It means they've cornered the market, not just for business social networking, and it's so much more than that. It's the amount of content, and you'll see UCLA and UCLA Anderson professors and other top folks doing things on LinkedIn Learning that can bring you up to speed on a new industry or a new business model, or learning Excel or PowerPoint or Amazon Web Services or cloud analytics. There's so many things that you used to have to sign up for, even an intro for, that you could probably learn for free, at least by putting your toes in the water through LinkedIn Learning. And it's a nominal charge. Terry, what's your thought about LinkedIn Learning and the value of it?
Yep. The answer is yes, yes, and yes. So COVID has kind of allowed us to kind of get into this hybrid mode that has allowed us to have access to all sorts of content. So LinkedIn Learning would be an example. Khan Academy would be another. Coursera would be another. Southern New Hampshire University, which is one of the biggest providers of online education, that's a nonprofit. There's a variety of those. And then, as you've mentioned, there's also just webinars of all types. So the stuff that UCLA will put on, a lot of the publications, The Economist, Wall Street Journal, they will all do that. So I think there's just such rich content. And to me, the thing you want to complement as you access it is, again, make sure you have the mental mindset that you're there to learn, not to critique. Because, you know, some stuff's good, some's bad, but if you judge it, then you're not going to absorb it. So you want to kind of take it on and then ask yourself, especially if it's related to media news, what's the so what? What is relevant? What is happening out there? So in my world, like technology, data, artificial intelligence and data is a massive game changer on products and services compared to hardware that might have been there from years ago. But asking yourself what is going on is a very important thing, because otherwise it's just kind of overload.
And in addition to asking yourself if you really are what's going on, reaching out within the UCLA network to find someone. You might have to try a few different people, but if you approach them the right way, and I'm a fellow Bruin, could you have 15 minutes of time? I'd really appreciate a few insights into your industry to make myself competitive.
Yeah.
And I think that people as a resource, knowing how huge the UCLA alumni network is that as long as you are polite and you're respectful of someone's time and you don't demand that someone send on your resume when they've never met you, like, just think about how you can make a great impression. Provides not just an opportunity to learn about a new industry, but finding people in your industry, the new industry you want to target, but also, again, LinkedIn Learning, or even look at job descriptions that are coming out right now. You learn a lot. All of us probably remember a time where job descriptions were what was in the paper at the end of the LA Times or whatever paper we had. And now that they're so rich, and you can get a strong idea of what it's really required and what can I learn and what can I learn, as you said, Terry, through the resources you mentioned, Coursera, edX. I think there's Udemy and so many online platforms that will help you for nominal cost get up to speed. And of course, I'd be remiss if I don't mention UCLA extension courses. There are so many and so many certification programs that really help people get up and running and relevant. So we're not saying nobody should retire. If you're ready to retire, great. But what's changed, and I'd like to see if you all agree with me. If you disagree, I'd love to hear that too, is that the stigma around staying working into this age is pretty much gone. It's like the more, if you want to, and you want to get a golf course or you want to move and enjoy your life, that's great too. But if you want to stay relevant, it's not only okay now, it's really something that is more embraced even in the last 5 years. Kelly, what are your thoughts? Agree, disagree?
I agree. And I was going to say, additionally, just the professional organization. So, a lot of times you're a member of the organization, but you're not an active member. So when, I talk to folks, it's like, join one of the committees. So start off by dipping your toe if you don't want to jump in, which is how I got involved with this nursing institute. I had, networked with people around Southern California, but the terrible thing about once you open a medical center or whatever, you don't do this anymore. So I think just that professional organization, and I completely agree with Gloria, like we YouTube and Google everything. So, I don't know how to do something in a spreadsheet. I have my double screen and I'm YouTubing it. And figuring out my formula. And I also have, just a great team of people who constantly challenge me and scare me. So I think that's probably been the theme of my entire life. But that's where I feel like you just keep growing.
And have you enjoyed being a little scared? Is that really giving you a little extra adrenaline to push through?
I think after, at the time, I'm like, why am I doing this? We started a podcast and I'm like, sure. And then I was like, what the hell did I say yes to this for? And, we started doing it. And what it's been great is when we have clients who ask us for information, I was like, oh, we've got an episode on that. We can send you about how to run a cath lab behind a red line in a sterile environment, like something they've never done before they can think about. And it's not just listening to me, it's listening to their people in the industry. So I think, the after part is probably much more fun than the process of going through it.
Terry, I'm going to ask you a slightly different question. And we all know that ageism exists. And so people might say, oh, the expression from a couple of years ago, although it seems to have gone away, this okay boomer idea, like okay boomer. It seems like that fortunately has dissipated. Terry, I'm sure you see ageism. Andrew, I'm sure you see it a degree, but how do you deal with that? Or how do you recommend people, if in their hearts they are worried that they're going to encounter some sort of ageism by jumping back into something new? Terry, what's important about the mindset?
Yeah, the first thing, and you just said it in the last word, there's the mindset. What matters more than age is your mindset. I have dealt with plenty of young people, and I speak on tech topics. And I get a bunch of young people that sound quote unquote old because they're dissing things, they're dismissing stuff so rapidly before they've kind of listened to what the narrative is and the story and where things are being used. So I think what really matters more is your mindset. I'm 62. I mean, I don't know, you were talking about the ages. I think I may be the oldest, but what matters most are the people that kind of embrace life, realize that things are changing. And I look at it a little bit, again, it's a tech analogy, but you look at companies that get disrupted. The measure of success is your shelf life. Can you extend the length of time before a company disrupts you? And you look at companies like Cisco, they've actually had pretty long runs because they've morphed their products. Same thing with our careers. Can we create a long shelf life? That's what's more relevant, which is more of a mindset issue than it is per se an age issue. And that's how I deal with it. I find it's eminently dealable with in your interactions with people.
Great. Andrew, how have you dealt with ageism, with humor, I'm sure with grace, but what?
Humor certainly. I think for me, I could say that the idea of ageism, and I definitely know it's there, was always more in my head than I ever experienced in the real world, like in any of my occupations. Here at Amazon, in fact, they coach you on those code words, high energy, those kind of code words for saying young person kind of thing. So I think it was always more in my head than it was anywhere. But I will say there's still a thought, again, could still be in my mind. I'd say in 4 years, if I want to move to a different career at that point, boy, at 65, is somebody go, I don't know. So I could just only say it's more been in my head than in the real world, thankfully.
Well, we're nearing the end of the hour. Terry Kramer has these amazing key takeaways at the end of the Easton Center. And I'm always looking for them, and I'm making sure that I catch all of them. And if there's anything else I found, Terry, if you don't mind, I'm going to lean on you with just some key takeaways for those that have attended today. How do you think about not retiring if you don't want to? If you do want to, that's great. But what should people take away in your view? And then I'll go to Kelly, and then with you, Andrew, and then Gloria, if you want to show any other slides and take us out today. So
wow,
key takeaways. The famous
David, you'd be great in the classic with your cold calling. I love that. That's like a boomerang. You're reversing everything here. Okay, so to me, the big takeaways here is number one, the breadth of opportunities is huge. When you listen to Kelly's story and Andrew's story and your story and all the things, there's a lot of different things that people can do in a variety of industries. If there were only one or two things, you'd say, why do I need to worry about all this? This is not looking very good. There's a lot of stuff out there. Number two, there's plenty of examples here where people have made very important pivots. And those pivots that have been described here have been super positive. pivots. They've been, I would almost venture to say, the most satisfying experiences that people have had. And then the third takeaway is there's a wealth of resources that Gloria was talking about earlier that allow this to occur. We have a broad network of people at UCLA. You have the thought leadership that's going on, a great school to say you're affiliated with, et cetera. There's a lot of resources. And so it leaves everything down to just what's your personal desire to make this stuff happen. But those to me would be the 3 or 4 takeaways I took away.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Kelly, what are your 3 takeaways? Or 3 or 4?
3 or 4, okay.
Whatever you feel like.
I think know what excites you and know what you love to do. So I love people, I love process. So as I looked at my job, it was, going from something that was very, succinct and organized into this complete chaos in a way. So I think, know what gets you excited and gets you out of bed, because you're going to spend a lot of time doing it. You should really love it. And I would just say, again, to challenge yourself and don't be complacent, and, really think about what is it, internally that's going to get you out of bed every day and excite you about, going to work. I personally love my team. So I would say, like, my other piece, we didn't really talk about this, but I always followed my bosses and I followed people who I admired. Not necessarily the job. So I just leapt into different fields because I was like, I want to be on that team because it's like a cool team, or they're really smart. So I'd say, surround yourself by people who are going to challenge you.
Fantastic. Andrew, and then I've got my 3, just 3 words. Andrew, go ahead.
Oh, just real quick, I'll say one is just self-reflect. If you find yourself in a job where it's comfortable, but you're not really challenged, that you just don't know what the opportunity might be and how you might just kind of change your life. And I'm really glad that I kind of made that change, which I think everyone's kind of discussed. So just to be able to reflect and really think, is this enough? Is this enough? And the other is just never doubt what the opportunities are. I mean, I really did not think at 56, I thought it was just a complete long shot. And so you just never know. So I would say just take the risk. That's the other takeaway I would have.
Fantastic. All great ideas. Only 3 words I was going to add is enthusiasm, curiosity, and EQ. Meaning, I think part of what will, if you don't want to retire and you want to stay engaged, we've talked about ways to stay engaged with UCLA, how to bring yourself up from a tech perspective or just an industry perspective. It's never been easier. So enthusiasm and your tone, the way you interview counts for a lot, and your enthusiasm in connecting other people, giving back whenever you can. I would say curiosity, emotional and intellectual curiosity. I think that keeps you young. And again, I'm 58, and I feel like a lot of the panelists here is that our best work is still ahead of us. And if you want it to be, and if you want to retire, that's great too. But also EQ, never underestimate the power of emotional intelligence, which is the acronym that they use for emotional intelligence. Your ability to work with others, to motivate others, to inspire others is huge. And if you can keep all those things and everything that's been discussed today, I think you can make whatever career in your 50s and 60s that you want. It takes a little work, but according to the panelists today, it's worth it. Gloria, you want to end with any final thoughts? And before I leave, Kelly Guzman, Terry Grammer, and of course, Andrew Plug, thank you so much for sharing your incredible stories with us. Gloria?
Yes, again, just to echo David, I'm so thankful for our amazing panelists, all of them, their individual journeys. It's so inspiring even for me, and I hope that everyone was just inspired, if not just intrigued to see what is it your path will be. And to be quite honest, one of my biggest takeaways is, ultimately you are not alone in this process. We are, to be human is to always evolve and to change and to learn. And I think being a Bruin, the ultimate thing about being a Bruin is that you have great practice on learning. How do you learn new things? How do you master new things? And I do believe that at UCLA, you gain the skills to do that. And so, congrats to all of you, is that you already know how to do hard things, and that you will do them again, and you will inspire other people in that process. And I do believe that UCLA, we have the ecosystem to really we want to give our alumni more opportunities and resources. And the chancellor, ultimately, we will be sharing some new opportunities through our Bruin Promise, which is really to engage our alumni throughout the lifetime that they have as alumni, and that UCLA wants to be a part of that journey with you. And so I know that I had one more slide that I wanted to share with everyone in terms of, to wrap up everything that we have done here, is think about your action plan and commit to it. Whether that is, you know, reaching out to someone to network, learning something new, commit to it and really push yourself. And Andrew shared the amazing things that he did to really get that job at Amazon, is challenging yourself to do that. And also update your online presence. Even if it's not necessarily, you don't want to get a new job, but let the world know all the amazing things you have done already, right? And because opportunities can come your way that you may not even be seeking out. And also evaluate your Bruin network. Maybe some networking scares you because you're like, I don't know if I want to put myself out there, but think of the people you know already. They could be allies in this continual process for you, and evaluate that. You may not actually have to introduce yourself to anybody new to really reach your goals, but think about your network and find ways that you can grow with those around you. And then also explore your available resources. I've shared some today, but also I wanted to share others. There are other resources here that delve into this topic that we've talked about today, and we'll share links, and we also will share the slides as well. But different resources like the website Ageist and Disrupt Aging, and also again, like LinkedIn Learning and Coursera. These are amazing things, real treasure troves to really be able to dig into something new and find out if that's for you. And so again, to just wrap up our time, thank you to all of our panelists. We are so thankful for your time today, sharing your nuggets of wisdom. I have a whole little list of different things that I've learned from you all today. And, you know, we'll also send out follow-up information for all of our attendees today. Thank you again for your time. And for our audience, thank you for also taking the time and investing in yourself, coming today, learning from Bruins. And we're excited for you to do that all throughout the year with us. Oh, David,
One more
has
thank
some more
you
things.
to Julie Sina, Associate Vice Chancellor of Alumni Affairs and CFO. This is important to her. She's making sure that this programming happens, and we're going to look to the future to see maybe other opportunities to connect again. So thank you to Julie, and thank you again to Kelly, to Terry, and to Andrew. Really appreciate all that you've done and sharing your great stories and inspiring stories with all of us. So, and Gloria, thanks so much to you, Lauren, Joseph, Danielle, and your team.
Thank you so much. And again, thank you everyone for coming, and go Bruins.
Go Bruins.